Welcome to Attainable Green. I'm Jess, and today we're going to be talking about some spring tasks to do for your orchids. Now, here in Southern California, the days have started to lengthen and the temperatures are slowly climbing up. So some of my plants are really pushing out some new growth, and we have some signs for spring. These are some things to keep in mind before the growing season hits, so you're prepared for what lies ahead. So the first thing, of course, is to clean up any dead debris, any dead leaves, spikes, flowers, or even dead plants. I like to keep my areas pretty clean, just so that it reduces the number of areas for pests to hide, and it helps me observe and take notice of any problems beforehand so I can prevent issues from getting more serious, and I can make sure that my plants stay healthy. This is also the time to take care of some tasks that you may have been putting off. Things like sterilizing your pots, putting away or ordering new media, cleaning up some stakes, and just preparing for the growing season. So just make sure that you have all your supplies with you, any fertilizer that you need to order, or any pest prevention measures. The next step is to test your water and to adjust and figure out your fertilizer schedule for the growing season. Now, I water my plants with tap water and I have great success, and I use a little bit of fertilizer to enhance its growth. I like to test my water every couple of years just to make sure that I'm giving the right amount of nutrients to my plants. Here in Southern California, we have fairly hard water that has a moderate TDS level, which is between 200 to 300 parts per million, and the pH can run between 7 and 8. That being said, when I pair fertilizer with my tap water, I need to make sure that the final solution is within a range of 5.5 to 6.5, and that the TDS stays below about 1,000 parts per million. Usually my heavy feeders, like my catasetums, do well with higher amounts of fertilizer, but smaller plants and seedlings need less fertilizer. So I just make sure that I adjust that and that I don't over-fertilize my plants. So if I don't use a slow release fertilizer, then I do kind of a weekly schedule, which basically means I use a dilute solution of fertilizer water to pour on my plants every week, and then the third week or the fourth week of the month, I just flush with plain tap water. I just want to make sure that there's no salt buildup or too much fertilizer buildup in the media. So I just want to make sure that my plants have the right amount of nutrients, but not too much. So the next section is about pest prevention. Now, obviously, we don't always have the ideal environment for orchids to grow. And because of that, stresses may occur that may cause them to attract pests. When we're going indoors, the pest problem can be magnified since we don't have any beneficial predators to keep the pest population in check. So in order to prevent any pest issues from occurring, it's just best to maintain a couple of things. So first, you just want to make sure that your areas are clean. There's no place for pests to hide. Two, you want to make sure your plants are healthy. So as long as you keep a regular watering schedule and they get enough light, they should be okay. If you do encounter a pest issue, then it's best to treat it right away, because the smaller the issue, the easier it is to take care of, and the longer you ignore it, the bigger the problem can be. Aphids tend to be a more visible pest around this time, and luckily most of the aphids are attacking my gardening plants, or like my vegetable plants, like my peppers and my chard. They're getting a little bit of aphid damage. So I'm using some of my vegetable plants as kind of the host plant so that the aphids don't actually attack my orchid collection. Every so often, I may get some aphids on some flower buds or even on some areas that are known to have a lot of sap. To take care of aphids, it's pretty simple. You just kind of wash them off the plant, and they don't really come back. If it's a more serious issue, then you might have to resort to using other options. Growing indoors, the pests that I see are spider mites, thrips, and mealybugs. I haven't had an issue with scale, and I'm hoping that I won't have to deal with that for a long time. Luckily this season, the pest pressures have been very low, and I've only been dealing with a few mealybugs on some of my rescue Phalaenopsis, and that's pretty much the extent of the pest issue that I have to deal with. And overall, by maintaining your collection well and keeping them healthy is probably the best thing you can do to prevent pests. Now the next section is about planting and potting. Right now, this is a time when most deciduous orchids are starting to start their new growth for the year. For catasetums, that just means that all the dormant bulbs are starting some new growths or flowers. This is also the best time to divide the plants because as the new growth starts and it starts new roots, it'll be easier to establish and there will be less setback for the plant. Not only is this the perfect time to divide plants, but it's also around the time that you want to be repotting any plants. For me, I have some cattleyas that need repotting. Either the pots are too small for the new growth, so they're going to be coming out of the pot pretty soon, or they just need a new environment. So I'm setting aside a couple of plants that I know will need to be repotted soon, and this is the time to really get on top of those things. I try to repot a couple of plants every week just to make sure that it doesn't become a huge chore, and that way it is a lot more manageable if you have to repot an entire collection. So this year I'm trying to grow terrestrial orchids. Now most of you may be familiar with jewel orchids, which are known for their lovely foliage, and they are actually pretty easy. I got a couple of established cuttings that are continuing to grow, so that hasn't been that big of an issue. The thing I'm a little bit anxious about are growing the terrestrial orchids that are still in a tuberous form. So they die back all their leaves during the winter season into a small tuber, and then you can plant that tuber in soil and leave it for the winter season, and then in the spring it'll emerge. So right now I have a few that haven't been potted up yet, so I know that coming soon I will probably need to pot them up so that they can acclimate to their environment before sending out new growth. Now the last thing to do for the spring season is to really take inventory and take stock of what you have, and also just to reevaluate how you're doing your record keeping. So if you have a small collection, it's pretty easy to maintain and understand how your plants are doing because you don't have very many and you probably have the running log in your head. But if you have a larger collection, it's just easier to have a place where you can look back and refer to see like when the plant was last repotted, when was the last time it bloomed, and other things like that that are important to you. Last year, I tried to use a kind of bullet journal system, and some of the things worked and some of the things didn't. So from the system that I tried last year, I realized that I need to keep things really simple. I tried to track my watering schedule, and that was kind of a hit or miss. Because I water different sections of my house throughout the week, the watering schedule chart was not as effective. What was most interesting to me was keeping track of the plants that had bloomed and then any issues that I had with other plants. This year, not only am I trying to track the blooms, but I'm also tracking my repots. Those are the things that I find help me to understand my plants a little bit better if I want to keep them in my inventory or if I need to rehome them. I really need to take inventory of my plants because I don't want to keep buying so many plants that I have too many for me to take care of well. I mentioned in one of my previous videos that I am downsizing my collection and I'm slowly rehoming my plants. The more I spend time with my plants, the more I realize that not all of them bring me joy. By maintaining my collection and just editing every so often, I think that gets me closer to having the collection that I really want. This year, I'm really focusing on getting and keeping plants that I really love, and these are the ones that are really special to me. And I want to make sure that these ones are maybe my top 5 favorites so that overall I will have a big collection of favorites, and I think that will help me to increase my satisfaction and contentment with the plants that I have so that I don't feel like I need to buy more plants and so that my wish list doesn't grow to like 50 or 100 plants because I like everything that I see. As I'm maturing, being an orchid grower, I'm trying to be more selective about the plants that I grow and why I keep them. Just because I like them and it's pretty doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be in my collection. I think the really interesting part of orchid growing is that we all have different collections and we share the same passion, and it just shows the diversity and range of what's out there. So that's what I do to prepare my plants for the spring growing season. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel Attainable Green to follow along on my orchid growing journey. If you want to see more videos like this, please click on the playlist, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!